anyone that I haven't gotten the pleasure to spend time with or really get to know, my name is Q Williams. I'm a member of True Light. And one of my biggest passions is outside of telling people about the love of Jesus is art. I'm an artist. I really love art. I love all the different mediums, perspectives, and just lots of boundless creativity that goes into each piece of work. I especially am fond of art pieces like this, like speed paints. This is an artist named Qua'Derha. If you look, it kind of seems a little chaotic. He does a lot of splatter and all kinds of things, but towards the end, it ends up coming out to be a masterpiece. The reason being that I love art like that is because it isn't what it looks like. A lot of the times, especially with his particular work, it looks very random. People have explained it to even be chaotic. It looks like a lot of just chaos, but at the end of the day, it comes out to be a masterpiece. When I look at things like that, it makes me think of my own life. It's almost been about 6 years since I tried to take my own life. And I look back on those seasons and I realized just how, at the time, things were really chaotic and hectic. And I didn't really see how it would turn out. I didn't even think that my life really had any merit to become something. But now, like that I'm on the other side of it, like I see just how much it just built so much, something greater than what I saw at the time. And so that brings us to our text, really, which is Isaiah 55, verses 9 to 11. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. And it will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. So more often than not, I feel like we don't know what the rough patches in our life are going to turn out to be. They usually come out in seasons and areas of our life where it seemed really inconvenient to us, maybe really scary as well. And it, at the end of the day, we have an expectation of what our lives are supposed to look like. And I think that's the great thing, is that when I think about those times in my life where things didn't turn out the way that I thought they would, my response was to try to control my life by controlling the end of it. And I think for a lot of people, control is the biggest thing that we try to take hold on in seasons like that. But I've learned now to just rely on God and to really like put my trust in him, and knowing that he knows my story from beginning to end. The reason why I chose this verse is specifically for that. I feel like I'm in a similar season again. But when I read this verse, I kept coming back to it for a few months, actually. And each time there were 3 things that jumped out to me. The first being perspective. You know, in verse 9, God is really pointing us to the position of heaven to earth and how one is higher than the other. And so it has a divergent perspective, point of view. And so it's the same way with our thoughts. You know, I looked at my life then and I didn't see anything worthy. I didn't see anything that had value. But God saw my life and was like, you know what? There's so much more that she doesn't even know, you know? And so it makes me also think about how our perspectives just shift so much because we're so close to something. And because we have the perspective of seeing something head on, we don't realize the bigger scope of it. God is so much bigger than us. He sees things from just the entirety, like he sees the picture of our lives in its entirety. And so it makes me think of just the people, the Jewish people when Jesus came. You know, they had their own perspective of what the Messiah was supposed to be. They thought he was going to be this war hero, and basically, you know, overthrow the Roman government for them. And that wasn't the case. You know, he came and he really came to overthrow sin for people, so that they could be reconciled to God, Jews and Gentiles. He came to break down that dividing wall. And so for them, a lot of them, they miss Jesus, they miss God in the flesh coming down to be with amongst his creation when he was here, because of their own perspective of what saving was supposed to be. And then moving on to the second thing that I noticed was path. I love like the end because it talks about the rain and the snow. And a lot of times that's the storm for us. We see those moments and we think that it's not going to, we really are more so about getting out of it than being in it, and realizing its purpose and its path. Like the trajectory of our lives in God's hands is, sometimes it seems like a storm in some seasons, but really it has a purpose. You know, the path for Jesus, you know, he had a 3-year ministry and he followed a specific timeline that led him to the cross. You know, it led him to this horrible torment that involved him carrying his own means of end. And at the end of it, it seemed like all hope was lost for the disciples especially, but they saw only a small portion of his path. They didn't see the bigger picture. They didn't know that on the third day he was going to rise up and, you know, have authority over death itself. And so I think about how that path really was expounded in his purpose. And his purpose was to be the Lamb of God slain for us. And so that just brings us to the last thing, which is purpose itself. Only God knows the outcome of the setbacks, the trials, things that we experience in life. And so we can trust him to know that it's going to refine us. You know, our purpose is to be in the image of God, to reflect his image and to ultimately reflect Jesus. And so those storms, those trials, those hard things are really meant to break down our exteriors and really allow us to grow. It's building a bigger harvest in our patience, sometimes in our trust and our surrender, and our capacity as people to love and to really live like Jesus lived, to love the way he loved, to help, to serve the way he served. And that's really what I want you guys to remember, is that it's not what it looks like. At the end of the day, God knows what it's going to look like. And so we can trust him through that.